go back in history to classics that take us back to a very regressive point, and this is the French cuisine that the whole world envies.
The art of living the French way starts with choosing your product, preparing it, making it look beautiful, then talking about it.
To learn modern cuisine, we first have to know where we come from and understand the foundations of the cuisine.
And welcome to a new edition and to the Château de Valençay in the Berry region. This week you find us visiting this amazing Renaissance castle and its famed kitchens as we put the focus on the French art of gastronomy. While the word itself wasn't really used until the 17th century, the original recipe for gaster nomos, or ruling the stomach, was actually penned at least 3 centuries earlier in the Middle Ages. And as you're about to see, already at the time, its 2 secret ingredients were power and foreign influences.
In the mid-14th century, Guillaume Tirel records his take on a 13th century manuscript on the preparation of meat. In Le Viandier, the head cook of both Charles V and VI chronicles his use of foreign ingredients and spices brought back by the monarch's navigators, and goes down in history as France's first recipe writer. 1533, the culinary revolution moves to the dinner table with the royal wedding of Henry II and Catherine of Medici. The Italian bride brings with her the 2-pronged fork, individual earthenware plates, and a taste for lavish feasts. By the 17th century, the tradition of gastronomy has taken hold and grows ever more refined under Swiss-born royal cook and pastry maestro François Vatel. But buckling under the pressure of hosting King Louis XIV and 3,000 other guests, Vatel commits suicide on the morning of a banquet when a delivery of fresh fish fails to arrive on time. After the revolution, gastronomy firmly remains on the menu. With his ornamental cakes, Antonin Carême becomes known as the king of chefs and the chef of kings, the first time the word is coined for a cook. In the 19th century, books become more accessible with the development of printing. Culinary literature takes flight, with bestsellers such as The Physiology of Taste by Brillat-Savarin. Alexandre Dumas of Three Musketeers fame compiled the Great Dictionary of Cooking and its more than 3,000 recipes. In parallel, the democratization of restaurants brings about the rise of the food critic. Among the pioneers is Grimaud de la Reynière, who wrote the first gastronomic handbook, almost 100 years before the publication of the Michelin Guide.
Well, if the power of gastronomy was ever put to the test, it was here in Valençay. In the early 1800s, the chateau was taken over by legendary diplomat Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, who, with the help of his star cook Antonin Carême, used fine dining as the ultimate political weapon. And to tell us more about this, I'm joined now by the chateau's director, Sylvie Giroux. Now, Sylvie Giroux, we're starting this visit in the dining room because this is where the magic happened. Tell us a bit about a typical banquet at the time of Talleyrand and Carême.
Here we're in the dining room with all the crockery and cutlery laid out. The guests already had something to be amazed by. And then you had this theatrical decor, with the theatrical patisserie at the back of the room, like a pièce montée.
Tell us about the service à la française, the French style of serving.
You would present all the courses, the entrée, the mains, the desserts, and put them on the table in a beautiful way. So you had another way of showing this opulence, showing others how well they're being welcomed, impress them.
And the French style of serving also meant that the footmen were standing behind the guests. This is how they were dressed, this was their liveries?
Exactly. That's it in yellow and red, the colours of the master of the house. They would stand at the back so they could hear conversations amongst the guests, and then they'd pass on all these secrets to the diplomat Talleyrand later on that evening.
Now, you mentioned the food a little earlier. Let's get down to it. Tell us a bit about the main dishes of the day.
Antonin Carême turned patisserie and cuisine into an art form. He was an artist and a chef, and he had an exceptional quality of products. No spices everywhere, and it was very refined.
We've now made our way to the kitchens, and they are magnificent. Give us a sense a bit of what was going on behind the scenes.
Yes, it was a huge team of kitchen staff. There was a room where you would plate up, and there were also the back kitchens. Everyone had their place in this giant gallery.
And these are the utensils of the time. Are there any that stand out for you?
Yes, there are saucepans from the period, and these cheese strainers, as Valençay is also known for having its own goat's cheese. It was already very fashionable back then, so it was made in these molds.
And of course, a key element then, as now, of French gastronomy is the link between wines and food, and I think we can visit the cellars?
Yes, that's right, just at the end of the gallery.
We're now surrounded by different bottles of wine and champagne. What were the alcohols that were best loved at the times and that were conducive to creating an atmosphere where people would spill perhaps state secrets?
Valençay was the most common, but there was also Bordeaux and Bourgogne, of course, which Napoleon and Talleyrand enjoyed. Talleyrand liked fortified wines best, which he would drink at tea time around 5 p.m. with a little bit of Parmesan.
And usually it's a sort of wine that you end a meal with, and it's that all-important moment of discussion, of talking about what we've been eating, and it's very important in this French notion of gastronomy.
The idea of the French gastronomic meal, which was classified by UNESCO recently, is the whole experience of the meal. I mean, you prepare the meal, you go to the market, find the best leeks, quails, etc., and then you prepare it together. And then you invite people over to yours and lay the table as best possible. You obviously eat, but then afterwards, we talk.
Sylvie Giroux, thank you very much. While Carême played a major role in exporting French gastronomy to Europe, the country's global reach is largely attributed to another man, Auguste Escoffier. At the turn of the 20th century, this infinitely creative chef and restaurateur did much to organize, modernize, and professionalize French cuisine before turning it into an international benchmark. His influence is still felt to this day in the country's most prestigious culinary schools.
Budding chefs flock to the heat of these kitchens from all over the world to absorb the expertise of French masters. These first-year students are concentrating hard on the day's task.
Avec le couteau, donc, vous n'hésitez pas à appuyer de manière à faire votre rosace.
Benoît Nicolas, 2015's best French artisan, is teaching them the science of puff pastry.
Every master chef must begin with the basics. Our goal is to make sure they're aware of this culture and heritage. This know-how is transmitted with the most modern techniques, with the most modern tools, and the traditions are very different to the reality of modern work.
On the menu for the day's practical work, pies, fruit tarts and pithiviers, a recipe created in the 17th century.
These are dishes that are quite old and that have been refined over the years. We are part of this line of great chefs who have worked on all these dishes. It makes us feel good.
The mindset instilled from the very beginning of the course, strict discipline and precise roles for maximum efficiency.
Everybody has different duties within the team, and the combination of all these roles ensures that our practical assignments go smoothly.
This almost military-style team structure was developed by Auguste Escoffier at the end of the 19th century. The famous chef revolutionized French gastronomy by putting it at the heart of the luxury hotel business. Here at the Ritz in Paris, he ran the kitchens from the opening in 1898. More than 80 years later, Yves Camdebord made his debut there as an apprentice. Today, he's considered to be one of the pioneers of French gastronomy, a modern, more accessible style of French haute cuisine. The chef remembers having discovered what he calls the intelligence of the hand, passed down the line to him from the legendary Escoffier.
Il y avait une quinzaine de cuisiniers avec un couteau et un artichaut.
I remember there were about 15 cooks with a knife and an artichoke working in church-like silence with the mastery and precision of a Swiss clock. All the excellence that can be understood and mastered in gastronomic cuisine flows back down into our daily lives to enhance traditional cuisine. And when we go back in history to classics such as hare à la royale, a béarnaise sauce, a wine sauce, which are powerful, common, but tasty, it takes us back to a very regressive point. And this is the French cuisine that the whole world envies.
It's
these ancestral recipes stirred together with traditional wisdom that make French chefs of every level feel like links on a long chain of national heritage.
And as we spare a thought for the country's restaurant owners, staff and caterers who are struggling through the ongoing crisis, we bring an end to this edition. Stay strong and stay tuned.